right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lucie's Inspiring Stories. Now, tonight's conversation is very special to me, not just because of what we're celebrating, but because of who we are celebrating. My guest tonight is someone who doesn't just publish books, he builds families, he builds bridges, and he builds legacies. Robert W. Jones is a founder and co-owner of iNET Publishing House. He's also a Marine, also a TEDx panelist, a seven-time #1 international best-selling author, and I have to say, one of the world's great master connectors. Robert, you are a visionary behind the Art of Connection series, and it's become a movement that has helped really create over 500 first-time authors and touch thousands of lives. Now, tonight, we're celebrating the paperback launch of Volume 6. The Kindle launch happened on January 15th. And of course, what's still to come is the hardcover, the magazine, the calendar, the coloring book, and our return to New York City this March, where stories turn into history. Robert, welcome home.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Lucie. I appreciate that introduction. And I am honored, and I'm really honored to be here. And I'm going to let a little secret right out the gate.
Okay.
Everyone, I tease Lucie all the time. And most of the time when she happens to call, of all places and all people that I'm with, it is always with my mom. And I go, Mom, she's on the phone again. And she goes, Who? Lucie? And I'm like, yeah, it's Lucie. And she's like, oh, well, put her on speaker. I want to say hello. And so I just wanted to say that up front. I feel so much tethered to you, Lucie, and so does my mom. And I think that there's just a magic that has created some space for us in a short amount of time, but it's done so in a very powerful way. And I just want to say thank you for being who you are. I believe that you just bring out the amazing best in people. And anytime that we're together, my mom and I always bring you up.
Thank you so very much, and I'm certainly honored to have you here. Robert, before we go any deeper, I want to ground our listeners because some may, have never heard about the art of connection for the
Yeah.
first time. So, in simple terms, Robert, can you explain what is the art of connection and why why does it need to exist in the world? That's
Well,
that's a
it,
big question.
that's kind of a loaded question. Why does it need to exist in the
Why
world?
does it have to
Let's
exist in
let's
the
think
world?
about that. It actually was created during the early days of COVID,
Mhm.
and my wife and I had a entrepreneurial professional development company, and during that time frame, we had 17 chapters throughout the United States that all met in person, and within 2 weeks, all of our chapters had to shut down, and it was a really trying time, and it was a scary time for us because that is what we put our heart and soul into. And it's the only thing that we were doing at the time that created the amount of money to sustain our three kids that were living at home. And I had to leave my office. I had to let go a couple of employees. And one day I was at home in my office working, and my son, who was 13 years old at the time, he comes across Lucie and he says, Dad, you old people, you got it all wrong. And I looked up and I'm kind of like, what? He's like, yeah, you old people got it all wrong. He's like, when you talk about legacy, it seems like you always talk about stuff. And I'm like, tell me more. He's like, yeah. He's like, it's not about stuff, Dad. It's about knowledge, because they can always take your stuff, but they can't take your knowledge.
Wow.
And that's when it hit me that I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before. And that's create a space where we could provide support, hope, and inspiration to entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers where it might have not been there otherwise. And that's how the Art of Connection 365 days of networking came about, was to provide a space where as people of business, we could support one another by
Mm.
having small bites, page by page, in 365 days of the year.
And that was the theme of your first book series, right?
Yeah.
Connect,
Yeah.
networking, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Networking. And Lucy, it was really, really tough. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I love to tell this story because people would always ask me, and I'd go on a show or I'd get on stage and I'd be on a panel and they'd say, "What's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life?" And that was easy to answer. The United States Marine Corps, getting through boot camp, that was the hardest thing I ever did. And then all of a sudden, this book number one came, and I'd get back up on stage and I'd say, "Well, the hardest thing I ever did in my life was to become a United States Marine and get through boot camp." Now, the hardest thing I've ever done was create this first book. And so Marine Corps boot camp became the second hardest thing I ever did. So
Right.
it really changed my life on a lot of levels.
And it really prepared you for stewarding other people's stories also. It's like unbelievable. It's like it's become a movement also. And every time I talk to you, there's something else coming up. I mean, you're just a forward thinker that it's like I'm afraid to pick up the phone because I don't know what else are we going to be doing with this. It's so cool. So
Wait, there's more, right? Wait, there's more. Oh my goodness. So
I love that story about your 13-year-old child. But at what point did you realize that publishing isn't about books, that it is about legacy?
yeah, it was the day that Angel Marie Monicelli, who's been in every book, she was there with me from the start.
Oh,
She wanted to provide something more, and her more is she wanted to provide a space so we could do a book signing all together. And we ended up getting 40 authors from 5 different states that all drove in to be in a celebration of the day to sign books and celebrate the art of connection. And she loves doing this to me. She loves to like trap me into something to just like stall my mind where I just freeze. And there we were up there in front of everyone, and people had all their phones up and everything, and they were recording. And she said, "What is the most impactful thing that you've learned about the Art of Connection book series?" And I just thought, and I froze. And then all of a sudden it came to me. I'm like, what I found as I looked through all the people that were there, I said, I found it's not about the book. It really is about the people and the stories that are in the book that really make this magical.
right.
And it was that day that it started to kind of change my wiring on this isn't a book series anymore. This isn't publishing anymore. This really is a style of need and want and desire where people can come together and live in a certain wholeness, do business, but also have really great, deep relationships. And it was that moment where I saw everything almost at once. And I thought, you know what, there is so much more that we can do with this. And I didn't know what it would all be at that point in time. But I said, I know I'm just gonna steward this along and make these things happen. And have I? And it's been amazing.
It's been amazing. I know that I joined you just last year for volume 5. And I
Yeah.
remember last year we gathered in New York City. I think that was the first time that you ever brought a group together. I remember, I remember how you thought, well, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it. And then before you knew it, there wasn't 4 people, there were 40 people. And so,
And then 40 people turned into 80 people, and then 80 people turned into like, I don't know, it seemed like 1,000 people in Times Square.
yeah,
And it was amazing because there was people who had no idea what they were doing, but they saw the joy and they saw the camaraderie of all of us. And all they wanted to do is they wanted to celebrate with that book up there in Times Square on the Jumbotron. And I tell people it's one thing to go to New York, but it's another thing to own New York. And I
right.
really feel like we owned New York that evening.
And we became such a community, such a family, and
Mhm.
we had such a great celebration. And it's hard to put it into words, but it's
Yeah,
something that is very, very special. And the fact that it's not. I don't feel isolated. I feel like I'm part of it. You know,
yeah,
but that's due to you and the person that you are because that's who you are. you know.
Well, I mean, and this certainly wasn't who I used to be. I mean, I used to be shy. I had a speech impediment when I was young.
Mhm.
I didn't speak publicly. I went to school for 5 years, and I had a speech pathologist and like a counselor who helped bring me out of myself. And they did it in two ways. They put me in athletics, and they started putting me in plays. And by taken to the stage, that was the first place where I started feeling like, okay, I do have a voice. And I started feeling the resonance of the audience and the applause and the feeling that, I could be seen and heard, and I wasn't going to fail. And I had two such superstar parents. I felt like for the longest time an imposter in my own self, because I was underneath these amazing shadows of my mom and my dad. And it's even now, I still am amazed how far I've come from where I was. And I'm also still amazed that now I feel like at 61 years old, I'm finally at that time where I love being in my own skin,
Wow.
where much of my life I wasn't,
Mm.
really happy being in my own skin at all, Lucy.
Right. And this has really brought you, not only that, but it's brought you together as a family, your wife and your
Yeah.
and your mom, and it's just amazing that it's become a family business.
And it's really become a family community.
A
And
family community, definitely. Yes.
and so one of the things I've always found in life, fostering, and our youngest is adopted, is there is family through blood, but
Mhm.
really there's also, really there's family through blood and love, but there's also just family through love.
Right.
And that's what I have learned is, you know, there's few things that you can really pick out in life. You can't pick out your parents, you can't pick out your kids, but you can pick out your partners, and you can pick out those you love to extend your family.
That's
And
right.
that's what I'm seeing in the art of connection. I've made more great relationships in the last 6 years than I've had in the last 56 years.
That's
And
amazing.
I can only believe that's because we are tethered in kind. That there's a certain energy that is evolving in this that keeps attracting people who want to be a part of something bigger.
That's
And no one person owns all this, not even me. We all own this collectively, and we all put like our secret sauce into this. And that's what's so beautiful about it.
mhm. Just for the audience, this volume six, the theme is about resiliency. I mean, this is the sixth volume. The first volume was about networking. How did you
Mhm.
come up with the titles every time? Was it a message that the world needed at the time? But, what was,
I like that question because it very much so it flowed up upon certain circumstances. After we created the first book, 365 Days of Networking, which is really about connecting, I didn't want to do a second book.
no, you didn't.
And
You told me that.
I didn't, because I was like, this is the hardest thing I ever did. And it's a very low paying job. The only thing I didn't have to worry about was getting shot. But I was like, oh my gosh. And and so I had a call, and I was fortunate enough to have Mark Victor Hansen, and he contributed some articles to a couple of my magazines. And one day we just sat down, and he said, Robert, when's their next book coming out? And I said, Mark, there's not going to be a next book. I told him the same thing. I said that it's been the hardest thing I ever have done, was to get, some 300 people into a book, and get it published, and let the world know about it. And he said, well, what do you mean? You're providing an outlet for so many people who sorely need it in an uncertain time. And he said, let me tell you about Chicken Soup for the Soul. And then he started talking about Chicken Soup for the Soul, and, how we didn't know it was going to go. And then all of a sudden, 100 million books later, and he says, Robert,
Yeah.
you're needed, and you need to do that next book. And by the time he was done with me, Lucy, I was like, okay, Mark, I'll do
Oh,
another.
the next book. Wow. Wow.
and 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 the reason why it was called inspiration is because when I didn't want to do it, but yet he inspired me to do it. And
Mhm.
that's where the next book came in, is because not only it wasn't just about the inspiration, it was I needed every author's story to help inspire me to get me through the second book,
Right.
because quite frankly, the second book was even harder than the first book. So Marine Corps boot camp became the third hardest thing I ever did in life. And but it was inspiration because of Mark Victor Hansen providing that spark that had me say yes. I got to say yes. And then came transformation because I myself was being
Exactly.
transformed. Then there was this other book called Gratitude, and then Abundance, and then the sixth book was on resilience because there was a man who I really, really loved, and we became good friends. And he flew out to see me, and I was wanting to fly out and see him. And he passed away during the process. And he was the original writer of the foreword of the book before Dr. Dennis Hill wrote the foreword. And his name was Howard Brown. And Howard Brown had a lifelong struggle with cancer. And the last day that we spoke, he said, Robert, you caught me on a good day. And we talked for over an hour.
Mm.
And he says, I want you to know that I won't survive
Mm.
to see the book published. But he told me, he said, I want you to know that I will be there with you when it does. And it gives me chills right now, even thinking about Howard Brown. And so I dedicated the book to him, the book on resilience, because if there was ever a man that exuded resilience, it was Howard Brown,
Right.
my good friend.
And in these times, we're all having to be resilient. It is very kind of,
It is.
apropos for sure. It's amazing. I hear you say all the time, people first and what we do second. That is kind of your philosophy.
Mhm.
You know, that has shaped your community, hasn't it? I mean, can you tell me a little bit about that? And because I've heard you say that several times.
Well, for me, I've always been a servant.
Hmm.
I've been on church missions. I served in the United States Marine Corps. I've always had a part of different not-for-profits all through my life. The last 2 years, and I don't really state it a lot. The last 2 years, I've been working with an organization called Nurture Our World. Christine Kipp and her organization helps one of the most impoverished countries in Africa called
Africa. Hmm.
Malawi. And so we help build churches, schools, and most importantly, event centers where people can meet and bring community together. And people tell me sometimes, they're like, "Oh, why do you do it with people that are in a different country, not your own United States?" And I said, "You're not seeing it all. You haven't seen the volume of my lifetime, because I have worked with organizations in the United States, and but I also believe that we live in a global community,
Uh-huh.
and my framework, my footprint, should be globally focused." And so that's how I answer that. But I've always been about, before we can get to commerce at the other end, we need to start with relationships. Relationships build the community where commerce follows. And that's how communities are all built. We start to create certain expertise. And, you have sugar and I have salt,
Right.
and trade, and we reciprocate, and we're both better for it.
Right.
And that's the style of community I look for. It's once you understand the people, then you can create the products. It's not the reverse of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's something else you always say, mindset comes, before mindset comes heart set. That's
You know, absolutely. And that came about because I remember when I was going to ASU in my master's degree, exercise physiology. And so I remember working with these amazing athletes.
Mhm.
And when an athlete says, he said, Robert, people always talk about mindset. Let me tell you, in here and out on the field, mindset goes out the door when you're getting hit by someone that's 250 to 300 pounds. The only thing you got left out there is your heart. It's your heart. And the thing I always remember about that is, like, you're right. Without a heart set first, there is no mindset, because I've seen a lot of people with great mindset, but if their heart isn't into it, they don't finish it till the end. because when things really get tough, the heart kicks in to push you across the line. And the rest of the saying says, it says, before you can work on your mindset, you need to have your heart set. And if you have your heart set and your mindset, you'll always pursue the skill sets that will create your success for yourself and others. And that's the full quote for that, Lucy.
But I'm thinking in terms of, your wife, Sean, and your mom, Ginger, how do they help shape that truth?
Well, well, if we're really going back to my mom, um, one of the things that she did is her, I mean, you look at how my mom lived, and she's going to be 86 years old this year.
Hmm.
And you talk about someone who had to overcome challenges. I got to see part of those challenges as I grew up.
Hmm.
She lived in a one-bedroom home. She slept on a pull-out couch with her sister. Brother would lived in a closet in the home, and the two my mom's parents, they had that one room. They didn't have indoor plumbing. They didn't have central air. They didn't even have air conditioning up until my mom was probably like 16 years old. A different time. When my mom divorced my dad, she went out to even buy a home. They wouldn't even allow her to get a home because she needed to have a man sign off on
Yep.
it for her.
I know those days. Hmm.
Yeah, she's lived through those times, and and she's also instilled that in me. And part of her work, and she's a PhD in curriculum instruct, was multicultural, non-sexist education. And what always reminds me about that, and why community and diversity is so important to me, is she said it's not a man thing, it's not a woman thing, it's a person thing. And
Hmm.
the sooner that we understand that, the sooner we can all move forward with velocity. And so my whole framework of living is, how can I help people and inspire those people so they can get to aspiring for themselves? And so when I look at Sean, in the same way, she's a strategist, she's a go-getter, she's going to beat the odds, and she stands up and she has character and strength. And really what I've learned from her is, um, I've really learned that as a servant, I'm also been a people pleaser, and character takes a different toughness than going out and being a Marine. There's a toughness, in the military. There's a toughness out on the football field, but there's also a different toughness that you have to have in business.
Right.
And my wife has really helped me create a different story when it comes to having character for business. And that's where both Sean and my mom have stepped into my life. They've helped create a different character. And they haven't taken away from anything, Lucy. What
Mhm.
they've done is they've just added to who I am. And I am so blessed for it.
That's beautiful. You told me that one defining moment was when your dad told you he was proud of you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
How did that moment change the way you lead today and you serve? I mean,
Well, going back, knowing the backstory, so you can understand that moment. When I was young, my dad, his undergraduate degree um, was at the University of Kansas, and then he graduated for Notre Dame. He was and he was a mathematician.
mhm.
When he was a grad student at the University of Nebraska Omaha, it was called actually the University of Omaha back in his time in the late 60s. He was in the math school, and he was student teaching. My mom was in the education school, and there was this other gentleman who was in the finance school at the same time named Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett was financial. My dad was mathematical. They were bridge partners.
Wow.
So imagine coming from a place where my dad was a bridge partner of Warren Buffett. Imagine years later, my dad working at TI, and his boss was Morris Chang, who owned Taiwan Semiconductor, the most
Mhm.
innovative chips on earth. My dad worked for Morris Chang, and talk about an imposter. My dad had worked with some of the most amazing people on earth, what am I going to do to ever shine in his eyes?
Mm.
And so that day I went over to his house, and I'm really fortunate that he lives only about 30 minutes from me in the Phoenix area.
Mhm.
And I gifted him a book, the first book of The Art of Connection. And he didn't say anything when he received it. I came back a couple of weeks later to visit him and his wife, and he came out and he brought the book out and he took it to me, and he told me how proud he was of me to be able to accomplish something that he said he thought would never be accomplished.
Mhm.
And he understood even the mathematical um, scale of getting that many authors and that much information into anything. And
Oh,
that's when he gave me that compliment, Lucy. And that's when I melted, because it made me feel like I was deserving of being his son.
oh, wow. What a great story that is. You know, you're in the publishing business, and one myth that you said that you would love to debunk about publishing is that everybody thinks it's so expensive. You know, what do people misunderstand most about that, of your industry?
I think that the biggest thing is the publishing industry wants everyone to publish solely a book.
Uh,
And for me, if you publish solely a book as your first book, what
mm,
happens is 95% of those who publish that one solo book are never publish again. It,
95%?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it takes so much time and effort and energy. And the other thing too is nearly that high a percentage of even books that go on the Amazon don't sell any more than 250 copies.
Mhm.
That can be very, very defeating. And so what I say is there's two other ways. It doesn't have to be as expensive, because now that we live in the day of generative search, and on top of that traditional search, and now that we have the days of collaborative multi-author collaborative books like The Art of Connection, a person doesn't have to spend thousands upon thousands upon
Oh,
thousands of dollars to be published. And and so, whether it's 250 or $2,500 or anywhere in between, a person can actually be published, claim their page, put it on Amazon, and show themselves as an author.
that's
And
you know, you really have to think that that's an unbelievable thing. When you told me, when I thought that that was going to happen to me, all I had to do was be part of this book, write whatever I needed for that one page, and I could claim to be an author. It was like, oh my God.
and and in this business, everything's about speed, momentum, and
Right.
timing. And so when I talk to people about doing the book, they would be served so much better by, and I like to say, I like to say compilation, 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 yours, compilation, 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 yours. And what that does is it's momentum, because that that takes a hold of the Amazon algorithm, which affects every other database that interfaces with it. And
Mm.
so, if you, Lucy, you come out with a book and you claim it, you get a full credit. If there's 365 authors in the book, Amazon and Google and LinkedIn and every other generative search, etc., doesn't go, oh, Lucy, you only get credit for being 1/365th of an author.
Yeah.
No, you get credit for it all. And that's what's really amazing about it. And so if you do 4 books in a row, collaborative books, and collaborations always sell more than solo books, and you do that 4 times in a row, and then you bring out your 5th book, you have created the momentum to
Mm.
where the Amazon algorithm also triggers the other algorithms, because you've established a momentum that helps search itself bring people to your door. And that's what we all want. I always say the worst thing that any author could have is to write a book that no one reads, because then those words have no impact.
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah. So many, you know, there's so many leaders that sit on powerful stories, what's the shift that can help them turn their living experience into, real authority, as an author?
So no one, what I have found is um, there are academic books
Hmm.
and there are entrepreneurial books that tell stories.
Hmm.
And there are two different audience between those. And you could even go into other books because there's fiction and nonfiction. What makes entrepreneurial books great is they have the ability to tell a concept and not sell a concept. And that's what I love. And books like Think and Grow Rich,
Right.
books like The Go Giver, books like Rich Dad Poor Dad. The reason they became read, the reason why the principles became so popular, is it because it created a story, a hero's like journey that showed a beginning and it showed a journey that has no limits. And that's where business books differ a little bit than other books. Great business books don't have an end point. What they do is they create a journey so you can have a starting point.
Well put. Interesting. Hmm. Well, for someone listening right now who, perhaps feels that pull but doubts themselves, I mean, what would you say to that person?
I so what I would say is
They
I
need to
I
join us for the next
yeah,
volume.
and you're right. What I would say is do your homework first.
Mhm.
Look for before you go into any book. And I will say this, even my book, I don't even know how I got the first book off the ground,
Right.
but I had a trusting community. It was all about trust. I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I didn't have trust in my community.
Mhm.
That's what made it work. If you are an author, start small, start intentional, build momentum, then go big, because it's all about the trust in yourself in as much as it is in the community or the book you're going to go into. You have to have that. But it's also this. It's find collaboration books where they're at number 2 or number 3 or they're number 4 and they're or number 5. And the reason why I say that is because established series, especially if they're at the right price, um, will showcase and benefit you more than being a part of a collaboration book where you do it and then it's done.
Right.
And so the first thing you're going to want to do is say, they already have a book out.
Right.
Let me buy that book on Amazon. Let me see if I can contact some of those authors and
Mhm.
let me see what their experience is. One, with the publisher, two, with the other authors, and three, even if you can get to them, the readers who love and rave about that book through the reviews. To
Right.
me, if we do our diligence and we're intentional about where we apply, where we're going to be seen, that will make all the difference in how you start off on your author journey. But like I said, start small, start intentional, and then build momentum.
Wow. Well, just take the first step for
And
sure.
just say yes.
Just like,
Just like my
yes,
Dr. Hansen tells me,
strong
just
three
say
letters. You're
yes.
right. Robert,
Yep.
this work isn't just what you do, it's who you are, really, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I love what I do. And it's really amazing because I've really come to understand who I am more by really getting to understand small bits of the people that I get to work with. Because I get to read all these pages and and I know so many books where people don't read the other authors in the book, and I say that is one of the biggest business, not just personal, but biggest business missteps that a person who's in a collaborative book could do. Because one thing I found out is when you have a theme and the book has a soul, the people who want to be a part of it are a part of the theme and they're the part of the fabric of that soul. So when you connect with them, there's already an establishment of trust that you won't get otherwise. That's why you connect out to them. And that's how you grow your community. That's how you get in other communities. And that's how you get seen and valued.
So tell me, after the book, the hardcover is going to come out, then we already have the magazine and the calendar and the coloring book. Tell me why a coloring book? So many people say, why a coloring book?
Well, I have to say a part of what I went through, I was blessed. My wife was working for a company and they service peace officers and veterans. And I long had wondered if I might have had PTSD in my life and I just didn't know it. And so I qualified to be a part of this program. And so part of the program was coaching, part of the program was like audio beats and lights. And part of this program was kind of like this regimen of antioxidants and enzymes, etc. But one of the things that really worked even better than just talking things out with the coach was actually drawing, and it was sitting down with coloring books. And the difference is it it kind of creates a space where you have to concentrate on it, right? Yeah, you're blending
Focus. Yeah.
two sides of your mind. You're using your hands, and all of a sudden, it's like everything that was going on around me, all those spinning plates and all the billboards flashing and all the cars crashing went away, and and it was providing me so much space and solitude that I was starting to subtly change.
Mhm.
And I loved it, but I didn't think about it. So I'm gonna give my wife credit for that. So one day we're sitting in there and she loves coloring books. And so all of a sudden she looked over at me and she says, coloring books. What? I don't know. We're watching some Netflix series, I'm sure. She's like, coloring books. And I'm like, what about them? We need to do coloring books.
You got it all wrong.
She's like, because if they can help you, they can help anyone.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my gosh. And what we have found is, and through the research, and research keeps coming out, is coloring books can amplify creativity
Right.
and mindfulness and being present and being grounded for entrepreneurs. And you talk about one of the biggest benefit men and women are offered is by just taking the time out every night to even go to a 30-day coloring book and just start practicing.
Hmm.
The change after your 30 days, you won't believe it. You'll your heart rate will change, your outlook will change, your positivity will grow, and you will have a sense of self once again that maybe you hadn't had for a long time. Because there's a lot of things that pull on us in this world.
Mhm.
And there's one thing I found about coloring books. It's just you, those colors, and that piece of paper. And boy, that is amazing to have even a brief reset of a mental, physiological reset in a few moments every day.
Wow, that is, well, I can't wait to have that feeling for sure.
Yeah, it is a great
So
one.
I'll be remembering all those
Yeah,
you said as
yeah. I mean, it is a great one.
and I heard somebody say, do you have to color outside of the lines too? Most
Color
important.
outside those lines. Yeah, make your own lines and then color with them, right? Do more than the line art. Overachieve.
I love you. You don't only get us published, but you help us feel seen, valued, and remembered. And that's what's so great about you and the community, really. And New York. New York's going to become our little home, isn't it? It's going to become the place that
Yeah,
we,
and
our
and
celebration.
Lucy, I grew up in Texas, and there's one thing, and I love Texas. And if I wasn't here in Arizona, I'd still live in Texas. Let me tell you something. If I would have known New York was the way New York was,
Mhm.
because in Texas they kind of build you to kind of feel like, ah, damn Yankees, those Yankees. And I couldn't I couldn't have ever imagined there was anywhere. The food was great. The venues were amazing. The hospitality was outstanding. And quite frankly, the people there were about as helpful as I've ever seen. And and maybe because we were a big group, maybe because we took over the city. I don't know. But all
It
I'm saying is it was like the most amazing experience I ever had. And I just wish I would have done this maybe 30 years earlier, because it really was the time of my life. And it was really a time of my lifetime.
Well, it's very funny for me because I lived in New York City in the late 60s, and I think I may have gone to Times Square once.
Oh my gosh.
And the
Wow.
fact that I stayed there for 3 days, it was like, oh my God. It's like people who live in San Francisco and never go across the Golden Gate Bridge,
Oh, absolutely. You don't know what you have until you leave it, and then you go back.
Exactly.
You wish you had it. I mean, you wish because you knew it. And I still remember all of us going out into the streets, and we're dancing, we're putting the book, and the photographers are going there. We're pointing up to the sign, and we're doing dashes, and we're whatever we're doing, we're huggling, and
Ugly. I
like
love
I tell Nefertiti, I say we shake hands, we do hugs, and we kiss babies if we can find them. And 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 what I really loved more than anything else is I got to be in the presence of the other people that are a part of this amazing journey called the Art of Connection. And I was able to be in that presence and really get to know them just from an energetic standpoint, like and that can never be taken away. And so I know you from an energetic standpoint, Lucie. And so it's a feeling that I always have. And I can see you from Zoom, I can talk to you on the phone, I can do all these different things, and we can create a closeness through that. But one thing I don't get is the personal resonance of you.
Hmm.
And you only can get that in person. That
That's
you can't manufacture that. There is no AI for that yet anyway.
that's very true. And I remember the first time I met somebody that I had met online first. I met them in person. I'm going, oh my God, this is reality. It's like,
Yeah. You have legs. You have legs.
and I love your
I
comment,
would get to say.
online you see them from here up and then you see.
Yeah, yeah. It's like amazing. It's like, oh, you do have legs. And I keep telling everyone, I said, I'm gonna take a picture of the top half and the bottom half, and we're gonna have a game where we match each other up.
That'll be very funny.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be your next adventure for sure. Well, I'm just so honored to be walking this path with you, Robert. I mean, I'm so deeply grateful for being here, and I just want to thank you, and I want to thank you all, those of you who are listening. Do you have any last words for the audience? If this is a defining moment for somebody, what would you want to say to them?
I, the same thing I've always
Yeah.
found: put people first,
Mhm.
do for people second.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you'll have a better understanding, and you'll understand the true value of what you're doing for them, and they'll understand the true value of you and what you're doing for them. And that is the piece of advice I just want to bring to the table. In this world of speed, everything's going at a light rate, especially with AI and Web 2.0, and we start adding all these things. But at the end of the day, all relationships travel at one speed, and that is the speed of the other person, and that is the speed of you. So no matter how fast communication goes, just remember relationships have their own path. So
Wow.
thank you, Lucie.
Thank you. So just to the audience, if there's something that has stirred you here tonight, uh, don't ignore it. You know, drop us a comment, reach out to Robert, reach out to me. And I want to thank you, Robert, and I want to thank everybody who's either going to be who's going mostly going to be seeing the replay since
So,
we couldn't go live. We had a few tech difficulties, but it all turned out. So tune in next week for another awesome podcast of Lucy's inspiring stories.
and Lucy, thank you so much from
Thank you.
my heart and my hand.
Thank you so much. I love you.